Good morning and welcome to a special lesson about VE Day. Now, VE Day takes place on the 8th of May 2020 and it was going to be given over to be a bank holiday across the country. However, with the current circumstances, any celebrations that have to take place will be taking place at home. But I thought I'd give you some background to explain just why VE Day is so important and why we've chosen to celebrate the 75th anniversary of it. Okay, so VE Day is Victory in Europe Day. It celebrates the end of the Second World War in Europe when Adolf Hitler was finally defeated. As you can see from the map, at one stage, Adolf Hitler controlled much of Europe. The war against Japan continued until August 15th when there is a VJ celebration day. And VE Day brought to the end of 6 years fighting against Germany and its allies. And in that time, 20 countries which had been conquered by Germany were liberated, including Poland, Czechoslovakia, France, Holland and Belgium. Although Germany surrendered on the 7th of May, it wasn't until the 8th of May that actually a national holiday was proclaimed for Victory in Europe Day. Now, various things have been checked before it happened, not least of which Churchill had checked with the Ministry of Food that there would be enough beer supplies for people to enjoy VE Day properly in the capital, London. And also, it was allowed, because there was rationing going on at the time, which limited what you were allowed to buy in a week. It was announced that people could purchase red, white and blue bunting without using ration coupons. And street parties were arranged across the whole of the country. Okay, so the next section is designed to be accessible by children in reception year 1, year 2, all the way up to year 6. So what I want you to do is have a look at the next few pages. Have a think about what do you notice about the people? Why do you think the photographs are all in black and white? How do you think the people felt? Would you have liked to be part of a street party? And you need to explain that to your grown-up. And how can you tell that it's VE Day in L.S. Lowry's painting, which is the last slide of this section? So you may want to pause the video each time and have a think about these questions as you have a look at the individual pictures. So here's the first picture. And this is VE Day in London as it was pictured in the Daily Telegraph. Now this is much closer to home, or at least closer to where my school is, and this is a street party that was held in Helmshaw. And there's a list of some of the people who were there. Here's another one in Rosendale, a street party in Baker, which is where I live. And this is the Home Guard, the people who had stayed at home for whatever reason and were prepared to defend Britain in the event of an invasion. This is them preparing to celebrate VE Day. Here's another street party. Again, you can see the bunting and the British flags being hung. And here's another party, this time in Haslingden, very close to where our school is. Now this is the painting I was talking about, L.S. Lowry's painting of VE Day in Manchester. So have a look at the picture in detail and see if you can see evidence that shows that this is VE Day. And grown-ups, when you're ready, carry on to the second section of the video, especially if you've got Key Stage 2 children. Okay, so this next section has got a bit more information, it's a bit more challenging. You may want to do it if you're in Key Stage 1, but most of this is intended to get Key Stage 2 thinking. So, this is how the British royal family celebrated VE Day. So, huge numbers of people turned out to see King Charles, King George V, Queen Elizabeth, and their daughters, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, as they appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. In total, the King and Queen had to do this 8 times. At one stage, they were joined by the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. The future Queen Princess Elizabeth and her sister Margaret were allowed to leave the palace and take part anonymously, which means they weren't actually recognised as the future queen or princess in the party-like atmosphere. Princess Elizabeth later recalled, "We stood outside and shouted, 'We want the king.' I think it was one of the most memorable nights of my life." So here's some things to think about. Again, you might want to flick back and look at the video, at the picture before. So where did the royal family appear? How many times did they appear? Who's the man in the middle of the photographs? Why do you think Queen Elizabeth described the evening of the VE Day as it was one of the most memorable nights of her life? And last question, do you think today's princes and princesses would be allowed to go out and celebrate in crowded streets in London on their own? Try to explain your answer to that. Okay, so grown-ups, when you're ready, continue with the video. Okay, now this is when the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, addresses the nation. You can see this sea of grey, his face is looking up at him. And this is his famous V for Victory salute. So at 3 p.m. on VE Day, Winston Churchill announced the welcome news that the war had ended in Europe. But he did have a warning. Japan still fought on in the Pacific, and it wouldn't be until August that Japan was defeated. Later on, Churchill appeared on the balcony in London. Huge cheering crowds heard him declare, "This is your victory." But they shouted back, "No, it's yours." However, in spite of everything Churchill had done during the war, he lost the general election in July 1945. And Churchill said afterwards that nothing would match his time as wartime Prime Minister. He later wrote that everything after that was all anticlimax. So here are some questions about that picture and that information. So, who was the Prime Minister? When did he address the nation? What did he warn? And then I want you to think about and explain to your grown-up how you know that the British people might have appreciated what Winston Churchill had done. And conversely, can you explain how you know that the British people might not have appreciated what Winston Churchill had done? And then finally, have a think about how you think Churchill felt in the time after VE Day and try to explain that answer. Okay, if you want more information about what happened on VE Day, there are various YouTube clips that can show you videos, and these are linked here. And if you were to use the PowerPoint show, then you'll be able to click on these live links. And also, there are a number of ways that would help you to celebrate the 75th VE Day anniversary at home. So there's a booklet by English Heritage giving you ideas and activities for VE Day celebrations, and again you could click on that link to find it. There's the Bletchley Park Make Your Own Bunting poster explaining how you can make bunting at home, and then there's the Royal British Legion's 2 ways of making VE Day special for the country, again at these web links. So that's the end of today's lesson, and I hope you find it useful and try to stay safe as you celebrate VE Day at home.